Imagine a time long ago, in a land that hugs the eastern shore of the Mediterranean Sea, a place that today we know as Israel. But this land has had many names throughout history: Canaan, Phoenicia, Palestine, Yehud Medinata, and Judea. After a devastating conquest by the Romans in 136 CE, it was called Syria Palestina. Now, let's dive into the story of how this region became known as Israel. According to ancient tales from the Bible, this land was named after a man named Jacob. Jacob, who was also called Israel, which means to persevere with God, was a Hebrew patriarch. The story goes that Jacob's grandfather, Abram, who later took the name Abraham, first settled in this land. It was then developed by his son Isaac and grandson Jacob. Later, around 1250 BCE, the Hebrew general Joshua is said to have conquered the land following the famous exodus from Egypt led by Moses. One of the earliest mentions of Israel as a people can be found on an ancient Egyptian stele. This stone inscription, created by Pharaoh Meremptah around 1213 to 1203 BCE, declares that Israel lies devastated, bereft of its seed. Scholars still debate the exact meaning of this phrase, but it suggests that Israel was recognized as a significant group, even if not yet a kingdom. By around 1080 BCE, the Israelites had established a kingship and were flourishing. They built upon the foundations of earlier civilizations, inheriting a rich cultural legacy from the advanced societies of Mesopotamia and Egypt. This period saw significant literary, technological, and scientific advancements. However, the story of the Israelites is not just one of growth and prosperity, it also involves conflict and division. After the reign of the wise King Solomon, who ruled from around 965 to 931 BCE, the kingdom split into two. The northern part became known as the Kingdom of Israel, while the southern part was called Judah. Trouble loomed for the northern kingdom when, in 722 BCE, it was conquered by the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians had a policy of deporting conquered peoples, which led to the scattering of the so-called Lost 10 Tribes of Israel. Judah managed to hold on a little longer but eventually fell to the Babylonians between 598 and 582 BCE. Many of Judah's influential citizens were taken to Babylon in captivity. The story takes a turn when the Persian Empire, having conquered Babylon, allowed the Israelites to return home in 538 BCE. The land then remained under Persian control until the rise of Alexander the Great, who took it in the late 4th century BCE. After Alexander's death, his generals divided his empire, and the region fell under the control of Ptolemy I and later the Seleucid Empire. But the people of Israel were not content under foreign rule. Around 168 BCE, they rose up in a revolt led by the Maccabees, establishing the Hasmonean dynasty. However, this independence was short-lived, as the Romans took over in 63 BCE. Under Roman rule, the land experienced periods of unrest, culminating in the Bar Kokhba revolt from 132 to 136 CE. The revolt ended in defeat, Jerusalem was destroyed, and the land was renamed Syria Palestina by the Roman Emperor Hadrian. And according to the book of Genesis, the journey of the Israelites began with a man named Abram. He led his people to the land of Canaan, following the command of his God. In this new land, Abram, later renamed Abraham, and his descendants, Isaac and Jacob, who was also called Israel, laid the foundations of what would become the Hebrew culture. These people were often referred to as wanderers. Jacob had 12 sons, but his favoritism towards his youngest, Joseph, stirred jealousy among the brothers. In a fit of envy, they sold Joseph into slavery to a passing caravan of Ishmaelites, who then took him to Egypt. Despite his harsh start, Joseph's extraordinary ability to interpret dreams earned him a position of power in Egypt. He rose to become a key administrator, saving the region from famine. During this time, Joseph's brothers and father came to Egypt and were welcomed warmly, settling there as guests. However, as the book of Exodus recounts, the Israelites eventually became too numerous for the Egyptians' comfort. Fearing their growing power, the Egyptians enslaved them. The Israelites toiled in bondage until Moses, known as the lawgiver, led them to freedom. He guided them back to the land of Canaan, the land promised to them by their God. Although Moses himself could not enter Canaan due to a divine misunderstanding, he passed the mantle of leadership to his second-in-command, Joshua. Joshua led the Israelites to victory over the indigenous people and divided the land among his own. This dramatic story of military conquest is central to the biblical narrative, but it is a tale found only within the Bible. Archaeological evidence in the ancient land of Canaan supports that there was significant upheaval in the region between 1250 and 1150 BCE. Yet, this evidence does not align perfectly with the biblical account. The existence of Joshua and the conquest of Canaan remain matters of belief. What is clear is that a significant event, known as the Bronze Age collapse, did occur around this time, leading to widespread displacement of people throughout the Near East. Some modern scholars challenge the biblical account, suggesting instead that the Israelites peacefully assimilated with the Canaanites. They argue that the story of a conquest emerged much later, during the Babylonian captivity, and was solidified during the Second Temple period. An alternative theory posits that Abram was originally an Amorite from Mesopotamia who relocated to Canaan. Later Hebrew scribes, uncomfortable with their Mesopotamian roots, might have crafted a new history. They emphasized their unique relationship with one supreme God, Yahweh, to assert political and religious distinction from neighboring cultures. As scholars point out, both the acceptance of the biblical narrative and the counter-theories involve a significant amount of guesswork. They highlight that extra-biblical documentation and archaeological evidence suggest the region was a melting pot, with diverse elements living under various political and religious circumstances. This blend of cultures likely formed the foundation for the later kingdoms of Israel and Judah, and Israel flourished into a united kingdom under King David. David, who took over from Israel's first king, Saul, managed to unite the various tribes under his single rule. He chose the Canaanite city of Jerusalem as his capital, and legend says he had the Ark of the Covenant moved there. The Ark, believed to contain the living presence of God, transformed Jerusalem into a significant political and religious center. Though David dreamt of building a magnificent temple to house the Ark, this monumental task was left to his son, Solomon. Solomon's reign marked the height of Israelite grandeur as depicted in the Bible. He forged treaties with neighboring kingdoms like Tyre, Egypt, and Sheba, and his sponsorship of grand building projects turned Jerusalem into a splendid, opulent city. His crowning achievement was the construction of the first temple. The periods of Saul, David, and Solomon are often seen as a golden age of unity and prosperity, although even the biblical account mentions economic challenges. For instance, Solomon's policies led to the ceding of cities to the Phoenicians, and his harsh practices eventually caused Judah to break away from the kingdom after his death. During this time, the religion of the Kingdom of Israel was henotheistic, meaning they believed in many gods but worshipped Yahweh as the supreme deity. David and Solomon used this belief to unify the people, but after Solomon's death, the kingdom split into two, the Kingdom of Israel in the north with Samaria as its capital and the Kingdom of Judah in the south with Jerusalem as its capital. These two kingdoms would sometimes ally, sometimes war, but never again achieved the strength and wealth seen during the reigns of David and Solomon. As time went on, the Kingdom of Israel saw prosperity under kings like Omri and Ahab. Archaeological evidence and biblical narratives both highlight their reigns, though instability often marked this period due to ongoing rivalry with Judah. Despite this, under Ahab's reign, Israel became a significant military power. The stele inscription of Shalmaneser III of Assyria mentions Ahab fielding a large army of over 2,000 chariots and 10,000 infantry, though modern scholars debate these numbers. By the time King Hezekiah ruled Judah, Judah had become more powerful than Israel. In 722 BCE, the Kingdom of Israel fell to the Assyrians under Sargon II, who relocated the population, leading to the so-called Lost 10 Tribes of Israel. Scholars Miller and Hayes note, Israel ceased to exist as an independent kingdom quite early in the period of Assyrian domination. Its capital at Samaria was captured in 722 BC, and Israelite territory was incorporated subsequently into the Assyrian provincial system. Judah maintained its national identity throughout this period but was almost completely dominated by Assyria. Jerusalem, however, stood resilient against Assyrian aggression. Hezekiah saw the fall of Samaria and fortified Jerusalem to withstand an Assyrian siege in 703 BCE under Sargon II's son, Sennacherib. Hezekiah's preparations, including the construction of the Siloam Tunnel and the Broad Wall, enabled Jerusalem to endure the siege, though Judah remained a vassal state, paying tribute to Assyria. The fall of the Assyrian Empire in 612 BCE, conquered by a coalition led by the Babylonians and Medes, saw the Babylonians taking control of the region. In 598 BCE, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II sacked Jerusalem and destroyed the temple, initiating the Babylonian captivity by deporting the aristocracy, scribes, and skilled craftsmen to Babylon. Subsequent Babylonian campaigns from 589 to 582 BCE led to the destruction of the kingdom of Judah. Babylon's defeat by the Persians under Cyrus the Great marked another turning point. In 538 BCE, Cyrus allowed the Jews to return to their homeland. This period of destruction and exile forced the Jewish clergy to rethink and reshape their religious beliefs. And before the traumatic events of the Babylonian captivity, Israel's religious beliefs were henotheistic. While the Bible often portrays the Israelites as staunch monotheists, worshipping only Yahweh, evidence within these same scriptures suggests they also recognized and worshipped other deities such as the Ugaritic goddess Asherah, the Phoenician god Baal, and the Sumerian sun god Utu Shamash. Yahweh, initially a tribal desert god, was promoted to the supreme deity as early as the reign of King Saul. Like many ancient religions, the Israelites' faith in Yahweh operated on a quid pro quo basis. They believed that if they honored and worshipped Yahweh, he would protect them and fulfill their needs. However, when the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem and its temple, and deported the leading citizens, the Hebrew clerics in exile concluded that this catastrophe occurred because they had not worshipped Yahweh exclusively. This realization marked a significant turning point, leading to a strict monotheism during the Babylonian captivity and thereafter. This era, known as the Second Temple period, began when the Jews returned to their homeland and rebuilt the temple on the site of Solomon's temple, destroyed by the Babylonians. During this period, Judaism as we recognize it today took shape, with the establishment of synagogues, rabbinical schools, and the canonization of Hebrew scripture, and the region remained under Persian control until Alexander the Great conquered it in 334 BCE. Alexander introduced Hellenistic culture and beliefs, which some Jews embraced while others rejected. After Alexander's death in 323 BCE, his general Ptolemy I took control of the area, but it was later seized by the Seleucids of Syria in 198 BCE. The Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes attempted to impose Hellenistic religious practices, sparking the Maccabean revolt around 168 BCE. The Maccabean revolt, led by Judas Maccabeus, resulted in a Jewish victory and the rededication of the temple, commemorated by the festival of Hanukkah. Traditionally seen as a fight for religious freedom, it may have begun as a civil war between Hellenized Jews and traditionalists. Regardless, the victory led to the establishment of the Hasmonean dynasty, the last independent Jewish kingdom in the region. The Hasmoneans expanded their territory, which brought them into conflict with neighboring Nabatea and eventually attracted the attention of Rome. In 64 BCE, Pompey the Great took Nabatea, and in 63 BCE, he intervened in Hasmonean affairs, pulling the region into his power struggle with Julius Caesar. Although Hasmonean rulers remained on the throne, Rome's involvement signaled the end of independence. In 37 BCE, Rome installed Herod the Great as king, making Judea a client state of the Roman Empire, and the people of Judea resisted Roman occupation, leading to the First Jewish-Roman War, also known as the Great Revolt. This conflict ended with the Roman general Titus destroying Jerusalem and besieging Masada, where the defenders chose suicide over capture. The Kitos War followed, leading to further slaughter and displacement. The final and most significant revolt was the Bar Kokhba revolt, sparked by Emperor Hadrian's plan to build a new city, Aelia Capitolina, on Jerusalem's ruins and erect a temple to Jupiter on the Temple Mount. Led by Simon Bar Kokhba, the revolt initially succeeded, but was ultimately crushed by Rome. Thousands were killed, and the remaining Jews were exiled, prohibited from returning on pain of death. After the destruction of Judea and the diaspora, Israel ceased to exist as a nation until the establishment of the modern State of Israel in 1947 to 1948 CE by the United Nations. The connection between the ancient kingdom of Israel and the modern state remains a hotly debated and contentious issue to this day.